Hi there, I'm Liliana Carrick, and in this video lecture, we are going to take a look at my guide to essay writing. I put together these essay writing tips in 2018 to help students of classics at UNISA with the fundamental aspects of essay writing. So this is by no means a module-specific guide, so you can really apply this to any of the modules you take through classics. I'm going to walk you through the entire process of essay writing. So right from the very beginning, starting with the basics, like unpacking the question. We will then move on to the planning and the structuring of your essays, and finally, we will come to referencing. I will also share with you some general tips, the do's and do nots of essay writing, which if you incorporate into your own essays, I believe you will really see some improved results, and this should take your essay writing to the next level. Lastly, I would like to touch on the issue of what makes a source reliable or unreliable, focusing specifically on internet or online resources. Now, the internet can be a fantastic tool when used correctly, but when used carelessly can really cause a lot of problems in your essays and generally result in a very poor essay. So, let's get started. Now to begin with, and I know this is going to sound a bit obvious or even silly, but you need to make sure you really understand the question. I have marked many essays where students have misread or misunderstood even just a small part of the question, and as a result, their entire essay has gone off track and off topic. So if you follow these steps, I think that you are less likely to run into this problem. So the first thing I recommend you do is break it up into its parts or different sections. So if you have a look at the example question I provided towards the bottom of the page, you will see that this is a fairly lengthy question. It runs over 3 lines. And in fact, it is not just one question, but it consists of 2 questions or 2 parts. So I have broken it up into 2 parts. And the reason for doing this is twofold. Firstly, what you want to do is simplify the question. You want to break it up into more digestible and manageable sections, okay, just to make it easier to understand and grasp. Staring at a question of this length or even longer can be quite overwhelming, and it could lead to a bit of confusion. So doing it this way, you make sure that you understand exactly what is being asked of you. So the other reason for doing this is to make sure you don't leave something out. I have had students write brilliant essays, but they have neglected to write about an aspect that has appeared towards the end of the question or a secondary question, for example. So to avoid doing this, you can separate your essay up like this. Okay. Now, the next thing I recommend you do is to look up words you don't understand. Academics usually like to use big fancy words, and it is likely that you will run into some words you don't understand. So don't just ignore them or try to guess what they mean, but rather find their definition, go online, it won't take long. So again, I've marked many essays where even just misunderstanding one word or mistaking it for a similar word has led students to completely go off topic, and as a result, they have failed their assignments. So don't let this happen to you. The next thing I suggest you do is to highlight or underline key words. Now, what are key words? Key words are the most important nouns and verbs in your essay question. So let's have a look at my example. Here I've underlined the word discuss, a verb, okay? And discuss, what does it mean? It means to talk about. It is an instruction. So you need to make sure you understand the instructions your lecturers are giving you. Other examples could be something like compare and contrast. All right. The other keywords I've highlighted here are myths. So this is what you are discussing. Spartan society, so we're not talking about Athenian society, but specifically a Spartan society. And what myths are we talking about? The myths that Spartan society used to legitimate their unique response to societal challenges. So these are the only myths we're talking about. And what societal challenges are we talking about? Well, the ones that occurred during the archaic and early classical ages, not before and not after. So use these key words to really help you focus your essay and not to drift off topic. Okay, now if you still face any uncertainties, you are always free to contact your lecturer who is on standby to help you. All right, that's what they are there for, so don't hesitate to ask. So once you are sure you fully understand the essay question, you want to think carefully about how to answer it. Don't just jump straight in, but take the time to think about it more deeply and to plan it out. You will also want to familiarize yourself with the topic if you are not familiar with it already. So you can go back to your study guide and cover the material there. But you can't rely on your study guide alone to write your essay, as you will need to collect additional information. And the best place to start with this is with the recommended readings and the e-reserves, as these have been thoughtfully put aside for you by your lecturers and will be directly relevant to your module and to your topic. However, I encourage you to conduct your own independent research. Research is one of the most important aspects of your studies and academia in general, so this is a really great skill to acquire. Now, you can use reliable internet sources for this, and we will touch on that again later. But you can also use the library, and by this I mean either the physical library, like the physical books, or via the library website where you have access to many digital resources such as journals and ebooks. Now, when conducting your research, you need to carefully select the information you want to include in your essay, and always ask yourself, is this directly relevant? It's easy to get carried away with your research when you are very enthusiastic or passionate about the topic, and you can easily get off topic. On the other hand, if you are still not sure about what you need to do, you could be collecting the wrong information. So, to make sure the information you are collecting is relevant, you need to decide how you want to answer the question, obviously once you fully understand the question, so that you can identify the main issues and find supporting evidence that you will then use to justify your main points. You can then start to plan your essay and decide how you will build and develop your main argument. For example, what will be your starting point? How will you order your points logically and systematically? Alright, so let's move on to the structure. Alright, so let's talk about planning the structure of your essay and focus on the word planning. I don't want you to just jump right into your essay. I want you to think about it carefully. Now, your essay is going to consist of 4 main parts: the introduction, the body, the conclusion, and the reference list. Now, your introduction is really an overview of your essay. Someone who picks up your essay and just reads the introduction should have a fairly good idea about what the essay is about and what your main arguments will be. So the first thing you want to do in an introduction is to state the problem and how you will go about answering it. Now, by problem, what I mean is the question, the essay question or the essay topic. Okay, the next thing you need to do is give an idea as to the scope of the essay. So what is your main argument and what are the main ideas that you are going to discuss? All right, the last thing I recommend you do is provide some background to the topic. And by background, I mean some information that is going to help to contextualize the essay, all right? So for example, if we go back to the example question I had, some useful background information here would have been to provide some information on the societal challenges. So for example, what were the societal challenges of the archaic and classical ages to Spartan society? It shows your familiarity with the topic, and it helps you to give context to the arguments and the ideas you will be presenting throughout the course of your essay. Next, the body. So the body is going to consist of several paragraphs, and it is important to remember that every paragraph or each paragraph will consist of one central idea. Okay, so if you move on to a new idea or a new topic, you need to start a new paragraph. So each paragraph is going to contain a central idea that is contributing to your main argument. And you're also here going to provide some supporting evidence. So this is where your research and your scholarship comes in. Okay, the next thing, or the last thing, is your conclusion. All right, so this is where you sum up your findings and general conclusions. Most importantly, this is not the place to introduce new ideas or arguments, okay? That is reserved for the body. The conclusion is, again, like the introduction, brief and succinct. You basically wrap up your arguments. All right. And lastly, you have your reference list. So, referencing, what is it and why should you do it? Referencing is acknowledging your sources. So, where did the information come from? If you read some information that you want to put into your own essay, you need to make sure that someone reading your essay knows that this is not your work. This was not originally your idea, but it came from somewhere else. And with the information that you've provided, they should easily be able to track down that information. All right, neglecting to do so means you could be accused of plagiarism, which is a very serious offense. For example, if you think about the music industry, if a musician steals another musician's work, so let's say their lyrics, this could cause a lot of trouble, and well, they could get into a lot of trouble, and academia is really no different. So taking somebody else's work without acknowledging it and pretending that it is yours is essentially a crime. You are stealing something that does not belong to you. You are stealing somebody's intellectual or creative property. Okay, so to avoid doing this, make sure you reference thoroughly and correctly. So you will be expected to do two different types of referencing in your essays. The first is in-text referencing, which belongs in the body of your essay. And this is when you use direct quotes or paraphrase, but more on that just now. The second place where you will be expected to include references is in the bibliography, which comes at the end of your essay in the form of an alphabetized list of works. So alphabetized with regards to the names or rather surnames of the authors you have used. Okay, so for classics, you are required to use the Harvard referencing system. And yes, there is more than just one different type of referencing system. Different departments or different disciplines have different preferences. So your tutorial guide or your tutorial letter will probably show you some examples of how to reference various types of sources. But I'm going to take you through a few now. So let's take a look at books. Now, the entries in your bibliography for books are arranged alphabetically according to the author's surname. So it would also make sense that the surname is where you start when writing the entry. So take a look. We have the surname, comma, space, initials, full stop. The date of publication, full stop, space. Title in italics, full stop, space. Place of publication, colon, space, publisher, full stop. Please pay attention to your punctuation and to the spaces. It's very important. So let's have a look at this in action. We have Leski, the author's surname, followed by a comma, a space, P, full stop, N, full stop. These are the initials. Space, 1980, full stop. That was the year of publication. Then we have space, History of Rome, full stop. This is the title in italics. Space, Oxford, the place of publication. Colon, space, Clarendon Press, full stop. All right, and you can take a look at the other example on your own. The next type of reference you're expected to include is the in-text reference. And this consists of the surname of the author, the year of publication, and the page numbers. All right. So basically the page numbers is where you found the quote, on what page. Okay, so let's have a look. So you can write it out like this. According to Lesky, open brackets, 1980, colon, space 57, close bracket. And then you begin your direct quote with inverted commas. The history of Rome is very interesting. All right, or if you can include the author's surname in the brackets if you don't want to include it in your sentence. So you could say, the history of Rome is very interesting, and then have the brackets with all three bits of information instead. So you are going to need to include in-text references when you quote directly. So using the author's words, word for word, verbatim, or if you paraphrase. So when you put the author's ideas into your own words, and that is not just changing one or two words, but it is changing it a lot more than that. Okay. Let's talk about articles. So just like books, articles are listed or organized alphabetically according to the author's last name, and you will need to provide the following information. So just like books, you provide the surname of the author followed by their initials, and then the date of publication. Now here is where things get a bit different. You need to include the title of the article, not in italics, but in parenthesis, in single inverted commas. All right, this is then followed by a full stop and the name of the journal. And the name of the journal goes in italics. Please remember this. Okay, this is then followed by the volume number of the journal. So if a journal comes out 4 times a year, it will have 4 different volume numbers. You understand? Okay, then this is then followed by the page numbers. So the page range, on which pages will you find the article in the journal. Okay, so let's have a look at this example. We have leper, comma, A full stop, J full stop, 1957 full stop. Inverted commas, single inverted commas, some reflections on Nero. This is the title of the article, and note it is not in italics. Then we have a full stop and the name of the journal in italics, full stop, the volume number, followed by the page numbers or the page range. Okay, and again, just like books, you need to include an in-text reference, and it is exactly the same as you would do it for books. So you have the author, the year, and the page number from the page on which you will find the quote. Now we have websites. So material from the internet is often unreliable, and for this reason, you really shouldn't rely on it too heavily. So if you are going to use websites or material from the internet from reliable websites, you will add your reference in a separate section from the rest of the bibliography. Okay, so all websites or web entries will be given a number in the order of which they appear in your essay. So if we have a look at this example of Smith, if Smith was the first author you used or referred to in your essay, you will call this website 1. Okay, and you will also provide the date accessed along with the URL. Now, very importantly, a URL is not necessarily the same as the web address, okay? Because if you go to a website and you go to pages, other pages within the website, you will end up with an extension. If you have a look at, the website address, you will see that there is an extension. There is now more information that has been tacked onto the end. And this is your URL. So this is what you want to include. All right, so let's have a look. We have website 1, Smith, J, that's his initial, full stop, the date that the article came out. Then we have the title in single inverted commas, not italics. We have a comma, and then the URL, so not the web address, but the URL, and the date that it was accessed. So why do you think it's important to provide the date? Well, websites change. So what this person may have seen on the 22nd of May, 2018 might not be what I see when I go to that URL now. Things might have been updated or removed, okay? So it's very important to include that. So in-text referencing, very simple. All you need to do here is write Web 1 or Web 2 in brackets, and this comes after your direct quote or your paraphrasing. All right, and this corresponds to the entry in your bibliography. So Web 1 corresponds to website 1. Web 2 corresponds to website 2. And this is organized or ordered, remember, in the order in which it appears throughout your essay. Okay. Now, this is by no means a comprehensive guide to referencing. I have merely included the 3 examples that I think are the most basic and the most common. So what I strongly encourage you to do is to have a look at a more detailed guideline, such as any of the 3 that I have included towards the bottom of your slide. So you can just click on that or copy and paste it into your browser. Now, let's talk about assessment criteria. These are the aspects that your lecturer is going to be looking for, okay? This is how you are going to be assessed, or rather on what you are going to be assessed. So, accuracy of content. How accurate is your essay? For example, have you provided the incorrect dates, or is other information generally incorrect or inaccurate? Is your information too generalized or oversimplified? This all counts towards accuracy. Now, relevance to the question. Is it relevant? Have you gone off topic? Have you gone off topic because you got too enthusiastic and started adding things that were interesting, but no longer directly relevant to your question? Okay, have you lost focus? Or is it off topic and irrelevant because you did not understand the question and you are writing about something entirely different? Next is the level of detail. And yes, you can have too much detail or too little detail. Now, too much detail, the problem with that is that you're probably going to go over your word limit. And I'm going to talk about going over the word limit just now. And it shows a lack of focus. Okay. Too little information or too little detail means your essay is superficial and not quite at the depth that it needs to be at this level. All right. And it means you probably haven't put in enough effort. So the next thing I mentioned here is the use of evidence. So this is where your research will come in. Have you used research or evidence appropriately to back up your points or the arguments you are trying to make? So does your essay show the use of evidence? Okay, from other sources, other reliable sources. All right, next we're looking at the quality of your argument. This is pretty self-explanatory. Are you making strong points? Okay, are they well justified and well explained? Don't just assume that your lecturer knows what it is you're trying to say. You need to really spell it out. All right. The next thing is your bibliography and your references. Are they thorough and are they complete and accurate? Lastly, your grammar, spelling, style, legibility, and presentation. These all count, okay? They might not be as important as your argument, or some lecturers might mark differently, but yeah, these are all aspects that matter. Now, as for the legibility, what I mean here is if you are writing it out by hand, can your lecturer read what you have written down? Is your handwriting neat? Or if you are typing it up, have you used an appropriate font that is easy on the eyes? And are you using the appropriate font size? Okay, now let's talk about habits to avoid and adopt. All right, let's talk about habits to adopt and avoid. Now, referencing, and we will speak a bit more about referencing just now as far as reliable sources are concerned. But for now, just make sure that you keep track of all your sources. Make sure you keep updating your reference list So if you read something fantastic that you really want to include in your essay and you manage to type it up or write it down, but you forgot to include the author or the title, and you can no longer remember where exactly you found the site, or you can no longer find the full reference, you won't be able to use it, and that will be a terrible waste. So be very conscious of this. Next, you need to make sure your sentences are short-ish and manageable. So when I say short, I mean like maybe 2 lines max. For example, if your sentences start running over 3, 4, 5 lines, you've got a problem. So they're either going to be ungrammatical or the logic might get a bit wobbly. So make sure you keep an eye on that. Now, paragraphs. Write substantial paragraphs that focus on one main idea. I don't mean that you have something lengthy, but all these points are slightly unrelated, maybe related to the overall topic generally, but not to each other. Okay, so make sure you don't do that. Make sure that everything in a paragraph is there for a sensible reason and that that information is all connected. All right. So I also suggest that you stay on track, or make sure that you stay on track by checking after every paragraph whether it still relates to the question or whether you are going off topic. I also recommend that you read your essays aloud. This will help you to improve your writing style and to pick up any errors or even just typos more easily. Okay, it sometimes helps hearing something rather than reading something. Okay, it's easier to pick up errors that way. I think we pay more attention when we are reading out loud. Okay, so bullets. If you are going to use bullets, you need to have a very good reason as to why you're using bullets. And this usually comes down to lists. So if for whatever reason you might need to include a list in your essay, then bullets are a good way to do this. So bullets are not for anything else. For example, writing full sentences. Don't do that. The next thing, actually the last thing I recommend you do, is to stick to the word limit. And there are a few reasons why I say this. So yes, you may be very enthusiastic about your topic, but there are many reasons why you should stick to the word count. First of all, it shows that you can follow instructions. Your lecturer gave you a word limit for a reason. Stick to it. It also demonstrates your ability to stay focused and to write succinctly or to the point. All right, let's talk about your checklist. Now, this list is mostly concerned with presentation and editing, but it can go a very long way to forming a good or a bad impression. All right, so the first thing to check is, have you included a word count? Does your lecturer know how long your essay is? This is something very easy to do. Word tells you how long your essay is, okay? There is a word count at the bottom of the document that you are working on. Now, have you provided accurate in-text referencing and a bibliography? Harvard style. Is there a corresponding entry on your bibliography for each in-text reference and vice versa? So when I say is it accurate, for example, are the dates correct? Have you spelled the author's surname correct? Are the full stops and commas and colons where they need to be? Are there spaces where there should be spaces? So all of these things matter, and your lecturer will be looking out for them. All right, so if you have used illustrations or images, are they directly relevant, and have you numbered them appropriately? So figure 1, figure 2, etc. All right, so if you do use illustrations, make sure that they are directly relevant to your work. For example, if you can make an argument without using the image, then don't include it. It means it's not necessary. All right. Now, have you used the correct font size, which is 12, and the correct line spacing, 1.5? And are your paragraphs justified? That means, are the edges of the paragraph straight? And are your headings centered? We'll have a look at that in a minute though. And have you inserted page numbers? If you are unsure about how to do any of this, YouTube is a fantastic resource, and there are many YouTubers out there who reels on this sort of thing. Now, have you used spell check? So if you see lots of lines underneath your sentences and your paragraphs, there's a problem, all right? Go and check them out. They're not just there for decoration. So, how to justify your paragraph? I have some screenshots here which show you exactly how to do that. You need to make sure that the texts are aligned to the left and to the right. Doesn't it look much neater? Okay. Now, let's talk about reliable internet sources. How do you tell if an internet source is reliable or unreliable? Well, a good indication of an unreliable source is that it does not have an author. If a piece of information you're reading does not have an author, well, then perhaps alarm bells should be ringing, and it should be an indication that there is something a bit dodgy here. However, if this piece of writing is affiliated to a reputable organization, such as UNESCO, or a notable academic institution, then it's probably safe to use. The issue, however, with some organizations or even academic institutions is that these are not necessarily academic articles, which means they might lack the kind of depth that your essay is going to require. Okay. Now, what sites are not reliable? Blogs. Please avoid blogs at all costs. They are off limits. They are not academic enough for your purposes. Blogs are created by public individuals, which means they might lack the necessary qualifications required to be creating this kind of content. Okay, they are not necessarily professionals. Blogs might be fantastic for the public, for people that are just generally interested in a topic and want to read up on it, but they are not appropriate for you. Right, and Wikipedia is exactly the same. Unlike blogs, Wikipedia might not always be factually incorrect, but the material is oversimplified generally, and, well, generalized. So there are better websites and better resources for you to be using than blogs and Wikipedia. Okay, now let's have a look at some sources from the internet that actually are reliable. Now, Britannica really isn't too bad, but again, it's probably going to lack that kind of depth that you will need. And Theoi as well is something that I actually suggest you have a look at sometime. It's actually quite a useful site to look at. But again, it might not have too much depth. Better yet, I recommend you use the Oxford Classical Dictionary online. In fact, I encourage you to use this. This is a brilliant resource, and it is free, so why not? As UNISA students, you have access to this brilliant resource through UNISA's library page. So let's have a look at how you access this. First of all, you need to go to UNISA's library page and search the catalogue for the Oxford Classical Dictionary. So one of the items that will pop up in the search results is the online resource. And the one you need to click is View Full Text ebook. And you will be directed to another site. And it will look something like this, Oxford Reference. All right, and then you can see the cover page or the cover of the Oxford Classical Dictionary, the 4th edition. And let's have a look at what it looks like. So you will first be asked to sign in via your institution, so UNISA, and you do that with your usual UNISA credentials. Okay. Now that once there, you will be able to, or once signed in, you'll be able to search for something relevant to you. For example, if you are doing a mythology essay on Heracles, or as the Romans would say, Hercules, you can search for that. And let's see what will come up. It will, well, you can choose for the site to sort search results according to its relevance. So here, If you have a look, it says the length is 1,894 words, which means it's probably the most substantial article on Hercules, and it's the one where his name probably appears the most. So yeah, you might want to choose to sort your searches, your hits, through via relevance. Okay. Right, and it will look something like this. Okay, so this is what will come up, and you can use this in your essays and you can reference it. So yeah, really enjoy this fantastic resource.